Let's begin.
Welcome, Patriots, to another edition of the Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot. I'm Jeremy Munson, a former state rep, and I'm here with Susan Sjogren-Smith and one member of the new Minnesota Freedom Caucus, Senator Nathan Wesenberg, and the Freedom Caucus State Executive Director, Paul Tuschy. They launched the Minnesota, I guess you'd call it chapter, or Minnesota Freedom Caucus. It is part of a nationwide state-level Freedom Caucus network. This is, I think, the 13th state we have. Minnesota's joining. And this is a bicameral caucus. So it's both House and Senate members that are caucusing together. This is a sub-caucus. I wanted to kind of get some definitions out. The definition of a caucus is really when two or more legislators are meeting to discuss legislation. So there are, when I was in the House, there were 32 caucuses. There was like the rural GOP caucus. There's the civility caucus, which is bicameral and bipartisan, where there's Democrats and Republicans. I joined a bipartisan bicameral caucus called, it was like the Health Solutions Caucus, where we talked about solutions for health care. There's, many, there's a rural, right now there's a rural suburban caucus, or no, it was called Suburban Solutions Caucus, with a couple of Republicans in it. Anyways, there's a bunch of sub caucuses. So this is just another sub caucus where they hope to get more conservatives involved to work on messaging. And it's a lot of people have questions about this, but I'm excited that they're doing this. I think it's great for messaging, especially if Republicans take the majority, so that they can message on more bold and conservative ideas. So welcome to the show, Senator Wesenberg. I'll kind of let you kick it off. What are the biggest questions people are asking you about the caucus?
Well, I guess not a whole lot of people, at least in the Senate, have asked me directly about it. I don't know if that's because they're afraid to talk to me or not, but I'm just going to keep doing the same thing I've been doing the last 3 years, is, taking a principled stance and voting for the Constitution. I'm not going to change what I'm doing. I've never, some people are afraid of, well, are you going to go after so-and-so? No, I'm not going after anybody, or we're not going after anyone. It's just totally following the Constitution and getting back on track. We've done the wrong thing for decades in Minnesota, and we got to go the other way. We can't keep passing, these huge omnibus bills. We can't keep passing unconstitutional legislation. And if you look at the House dropped letters of impeachment yesterday for Walz and Simon, right? Yeah. Now that's gone national. Now
Walz and Ellison.
Or Walz and Ellison. Throw Steve Simon in there too. Why not?
Yeah, Drew hasn't dropped one yet, right?
But that's gone nationwide overnight. Now, if they weren't members of the Freedom Caucus, maybe that wouldn't have happened. They still would have done it, but we wouldn't have got the exposure and say, look what we're doing. And everybody likes it. Every Republican in the state of Minnesota thinks that's awesome. The independents think it's awesome. Half the Democrats think it's awesome, maybe because they don't like Walz because he's not extreme enough, or they want someone else. But it's great. Is it going to happen? Maybe not, but we got to do it. We can't just say, no, we're not going to do anything. People want action, and we're doing that, right? So we drop these letters of impeachment and say, let's get rid of Walz. Maybe he should go to jail. Let's do something rather than saying we're going to do something but not do anything. So hopefully now that we're doing that, other people, there are people like, hey, can I get in? It's not just, it's not open it is open as long as, they called me, Andy Roth called me, he's the president of the Freedom Caucus nationwide, and said, hey, you want to be part of this thing? I didn't know what it was. I don't really follow Congress really closely. I, pay attention more to state issues, but, so, there's the Freedom Caucus in Congress, and now this is actually the 15th state Minnesota was just added on Monday. But do you want to be in this thing? You have a great conservative voting record. You have a voice. You're not afraid to stand up on principles. You tell people what's going on, and you stand up for truth, right? So if you're not in it, it doesn't mean you don't do those things, but they're looking for combinations of voting record plus saying something and making sure people understand what's going on, and not just going with what the establishment wants you to do.
Great. Well, let's talk about the bills that were introduced in the House this week. So you had articles of impeachment against Governor Walz and articles of impeachment against Keith Ellison. Based on all the stuff that we've heard nationally about all the fraud, and I mean, it's hard to believe they're not complicit in this, but the idea that the articles of impeachment are going to pass the House is pretty low chances. But if the Republicans are getting the gavel every other day, they can have hearings on these articles of impeachment in a committee and bring people to testify about the articles and bring evidence and actually have hearings in these committees. This is something that could happen under Speaker Demuth's, when she controls these committees. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah,
Paul,
I think my understanding is it's probably going to rules, and that's co-chair is Leader Niska, right? So I plan to reach out to him and find out what the plan is. But yeah, there's 8 Republicans and 8 Democrats on the committee, right? So theoretically, we would need to get it through committee. We need 1 Democrat vote and all 8 Republicans. But there's so many moves that we can make. There's so much so much we can do in that committee just to bring the focus back to the massive fraud, all the unconstitutional actions of Tim Walz over the last 7 years.
I mean, if they try and stonewall this, just the publicity between the Democrats and the Republicans, and having the Democrats say, we don't want you to investigate it, that in and of itself is a huge win. So I hope they're strong enough to actually fight the fight, because why wouldn't you want to have hearings?
There are so many wins to be had.
Right.
And
people
are, I don't know why people are very afraid for whatever reason. This was one of the questions I had at the LEA banquet for Cliff, but my hand was raised. I didn't get picked. But, why are there so many Republicans terrified of taking conservative stances, terrified of standing up for what a lot of people would say is, a few years ago, like, well, when the doctor says you're a boy or a girl, and then, you're a boy or a girl, like, it's not a guess, it's not a whatever the kindergarten teacher should decide, right? And that it wouldn't have been even controversial years ago. Now there's Republicans in legislature and in political strategists and stuff trying to say, oh, we better stay away from anything that's controversial for anybody and try to moderate. But
people are afraid of let's face it. We need to talk about this, though.
But the Democrats are doing the most extreme things imaginable.
Yeah.
And it's like, they won't go after Democrats for doing these insane things, but they will go after Republicans for being conservative.
But but wait a minute, that's because we have a culture of attacking conservatives, the mob rule, the at your house, the protests, the threats, the social media disaster. But guess what? If you're going to represent Republicans, you better get a thick skin. Are you afraid of that? You're not afraid of that.
Well, I mean, I think that people think
right?
that that's how you win. People think, we win by being super moderate. Well, how often has that worked lately, right? We win by taking a principled stand. And there was
and to that point, Paul, we're not winning. We're losing. Look how far left we've got. So taking the moderate stance has got us far left, where we're mutilating children.
When Senator Wesenberg reaches out and calls out a Republican for doing something, the Democrats, the moderates, everybody says thank you for standing up, no matter which party is for what's right. There's a huge section of people that just want somebody with principle. Nobody agrees with anybody 100% of the time, but if they see somebody that stands up for what they know is right, and they're not just some slimy politician,
there's
but
plenty of
right.
Democrats that wish they could say what they think. Believe me, plenty of them.
They're also afraid of the left.
They are. Progressives.
Yeah, well, we'll get into more discussions about the different policies that the Minnesota Freedom Caucus will be advancing or discussing and publishing and nationally, getting people involved. And then we'll get into some more of the questions that other members of the House and Senate probably have for these guys. Right now, you have 7 members of the Minnesota Freedom Caucus across the House and Senate, 4 in the Senate and 3 in the House. We're going to take a break here, but we'll come back and talk about the new Minnesota Freedom Caucus with Senator Wesenberg and the State Director, Paul Tuschy. You're listening to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot. I'm Jeremy Munson with Susan Smith, and we are interviewing Senator Nathan Wesenberg, who is one of 7 members of the Minnesota Freedom Caucus. And we have with us in studio the state executive director of the Freedom Caucus as well, Mr. Paul Tuschy. So, gentlemen, before we had to break, some questions for you. I'm sure that other members, whenever there's a new caucus like this, especially with such national recognition, one of their concerns is about, are you going to be primarying sitting members of your own party? Because there are some caucuses in other states that have PACs, and especially in deep red states where they're not being conservative to go and kind of go rhino hunting, so to speak. But in Minnesota, we have a state law that prohibits legislators from having access to more than their campaign account, but like a separate campaign account or a PAC, and having control of that, except for if you are a member of the legislature, you can have access to one PAC that the state party chooses to be a party affiliate, which they have chosen as the HRCC in the House and the Senate Victory Fund, or the SVF, in the Senate. So you can't have access to another PAC. If there were to be a PAC, it would have to be completely no relation to you and run by someone else. But you guys are launching this new caucus. Do you have any intention on running primaries?
No, that's not what the caucus is for. So we're not running primaries. We're not going after people. We're just going to we're abiding by the endorsement. That's what we should be doing, and abide by the endorsement process and follow that. That's what the will of the people is. So this is just set up to push constitutional values, and, we got to get back on track and follow the Constitution.
Yeah, it's completely focused on legislative issues. We're scoring bills. We're talking about it's all legislative issues. That's what this is set up about. And all of the 7 members are strong advocates for the endorsement process. We have a wonderful grassroots endorsement process. Probably many people listening understand it, but maybe some don't. It's not just like some of these states where they have primaries and big money comes in. We have a caucus system where you can come out in February. We just had our caucuses and the endorsements are happening. There's many. Senator Wesenberg was endorsed, as well as fellow Freedom Caucus members, Eric Lucero and Mike Holmstrom, were all endorsed last week.
Just let me pause you just for 1 second. And Munson was endorsed a week before I was.
That's right.
And some people were like, "Well, these endorsements are happening too soon." No, there's many endorsements that have already happened and have happened. It wasn't just mine and his. Other places were having endorsements. So if you hear, "Well, this is being pushed too fast," that's baloney. This is just how it is. We have endorsements, and we move on, and yeah.
Yep, and Representative Ben Davis, Representative Drew Roach, and Senator Bill Liskey have their endorsements coming up a week from tomorrow. And we, all 7 of these members and myself, we all are huge advocates for the great endorsement process where grassroots people could come out. I mean, Jeremy, you won yours, what, 90 to 90% on the first ballot?
Yeah, percentage of votes, I think, was 93, and delegates were just under 90% because we had some delegates that counted as more than one vote because of the way the counties apportion their votes. But yeah, so the endorsement process happens about 10 days after caucus is when it starts and runs through the middle of April or sometimes the end of April, depending on weather, to endorse candidates. And as we've seen in the past, the Senate Victory Fund and the HRCC have spent money against our own party-endorsed candidates if an incumbent loses their endorsement. As we saw the last cycle, I think there were 3 or 4 sitting legislators that were not endorsed. The local delegates decided they wanted someone else to represent them in St. Paul. And that's where we had, hundreds of thousands of dollars by the party units run by the legislators spending money against endorsed candidates. So I'm a strong advocate for the endorsement process, too. There are times where the endorsement is corrupted, where a primary is warranted, but overall, we should strengthen and support the endorsement process. So I'm glad you guys all support that.
This issue of the flip side of this coin is that there are people who want to delay the process because they can't find somebody to run against some of these legislators. And when you have a community saying we like our legislator, I mean, there's even been talk of we're trying to get somebody to move into the district. We're trying to convince people because they are, and they tend to be more moderate. They tend to be people wanting to move moderate, and they're struggling in some of these conservative districts to find competition. So they want to delay it because they just want more time to disrupt what that people want.
Right.
Yeah. In Senate District 10, we 4 years ago, there was no endorsement. 4 years ago, long story, but there were no endorsed candidates, and that was by design. And over $250,000 was spent in that district, one of the reddest districts in the state. $250,000 against Republicans, by Republicans, all the door knocking, all the work there. And we ended up with a Democrat trifecta that year because we were focused all of our money, time, effort, and everything on in a red district rather than against the Democrats in swing districts. So this year we wanted to make sure we had an endorsing convention, and we had to fight tooth and nail for it, honestly. And there was, as Susan said, a strong effort to make that there would be no endorsing convention. Some of these bad actors didn't care if we had to spend $250,000 or more in a red district fighting Republicans, as long as Senator Wesenberg didn't get an endorsing convention and to win his endorsement.
Yeah, and that's so
that's the problem.
The one thing that's very important to me is we got through the endorsement. Now we have endorsed candidates in Senate District 10. Now let's take all those endorsed Republicans and go door knock for, in St. Cloud, we have Senator Eric Putnam, and that's a vulnerable district. We should be able to get rid of him and put in Bernadette. I said we should use Bernadette, not Bernie, so people know it's a woman. But so we can go door knock there and get rid of Putnam. So I can take my army of people that are going to help me and bring them down there. And then we're not wasting our time and talent and treasure in a real red district that's going to stay Republican. Let's go door knock against him and get rid of him. Or if you're in the northeast part of my district, we can go help Senator Rob Farnsworth, because someone just announced a Democrat. He's a Republican there, but a Democrat just announced that she's going to run against him. So we can send people up there and help him door knock rather than having to fight in our own backyard or against ourselves.
So one thing I think that these endorsing conventions, I think, are important for people to understand. For listeners who are involved in the Republican Party and who are either connected through being a delegate or an alternate, who have a family member or friend who's a delegate or an alternate, I think too often we don't really explain to Republicans in general why this matters so much. Right now, we are in the most critical phase of fixing our party, and we are not doing a great job of letting people know why it's important. And why it's important is because at these conventions that are happening all across the state over the next month are where we elect the people who get to restore freedom to their local political wing or arm of the Republican Party. And too many people don't understand that it's not just about endorsing one candidate. It's about, when you get there, holding that leadership accountable. So when you have a BPOU chair that says, we don't want to have the endorsing convention, these delegates that are going to get elected right now at these BPOUs have all of the power in the world to shift and demand their local unit is fighting for Republicans. And that's where we've broken this, is that we don't have enough people understanding they actually have the power. They have the power at those local units to make a difference and elect good people. Go to those endorsing conventions. And frankly, every Republican in the district can attend these things. You can go, and I encourage people to go, because the more people that go to these conventions, even to observe and to watch what's happening in their local district, people become accountable. And I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but it's critical. We've got to get more average Republicans involved.
Well, yeah, I mean, people just need to show up, and this is, where we say you need to vote. Well, yes, you absolutely need to go vote this November. Everybody grab at least one person and go vote, and the state will be red. If every Republican that votes grabs another Republican, we will crush it, and Minnesota will be blood red. But also, the reason this process is so important is you go become a delegate on caucus night, and if you show up and you want your voice heard, and we flood our caucuses like we have, not to get into the weeds, but if there's 400 people that can be delegates, we only had 225 people show up. So there's 175 empty seats that, we could have more delegates. You need to get involved. You need to have civic engagement. Yep, your kid may have had a volleyball game or you missed bow hunting or something, but you must do this because we're losing our country. And you do have your voice. And that's why some people are trying to take this away. They want to get rid of the caucus process. They want to get rid of the endorsement. They want to go right to primary so they can just try to buy the elections. We can't let that happen. The process we have right now is excellent, but you need to get engaged and you need to show up so your voice is heard.
Right.
So let's talk. Shift back to talking about the caucus and policy. One of the advantages that I see with the Minnesota Freedom Caucus is that you have all of these other caucuses in other states who are also working on state legislation. You're going to share ideas with like-minded legislators in other states. And then for somebody like me that loves liberty and limited government and freedom, and occasionally doesn't like legislation that's being pushed by the majority of Republicans in St. Paul, I would look to the Freedom Caucus to maybe take a different stance. One example I'm going to give you is a bill that was introduced by Walter Hudson in the House that has 29 other Republicans signed on, which is going to ban protesting in residential areas. I did a post earlier this week sharing a video put out by Alpha News of a protest that I helped organize where we had over 1,000 people protesting in front of Governor Walz's residence in a residential area during the lockdowns in COVID, and how this bill would make it illegal and against our First Amendment protections to protest outside, on the sidewalk. We have laws against trespassing. We have noise ordinances. We have laws against vandalism and everything else. But peacefully protesting in residential areas should not be illegal. And I would look to the Freedom Caucus to perhaps take a different stance. What is now not a policy for your caucus, but what is your position, Senator Wesenberg, on a bill like that?
Yeah, so this is me speaking for myself, not because if we're going to take a policy position with the caucus, we need to vote on it, and that hasn't happened. So anything I say is me speaking for myself. But no, I agree. This bill is anti-First Amendment. And the thing is, you already stated it, if there's laws being broken, then we need to hold the lawbreakers accountable. And we're not doing that. If you break into a Target, you're not getting arrested and put in jail. Nothing's happening. Literally, 200 people go vandalize Target and nothing happens. So if someone comes onto your lawn, you say, get off my lawn, you're trespassing, and you call 911 then if you need to. But if you're peacefully standing in front of someone's house with a sign and singing God Bless America or whatever you're doing, that's peaceful. Sounds like we're getting into a break here. I hear the music coming on. So,
I think this is one of the issues I think that has happened, that they use these protests to intimidate people. And this is where we need Republicans to stand up and say, you're not intimidating me. You're just not, because this is what we have to do. If we don't fight this war, we're going to be fighting a much bigger war. And it's just critical that we defend people's freedom and our constitutional rights. We have to do that. So we'll be back shortly.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot. I'm Jeremy Munson with Susan Smith, and we are talking about the Minnesota Freedom Caucus, and specifically about some bills that I, as a voter, are concerned about, that Republicans seem to be supporting overwhelmingly in the House. And so I've asked Senator Wesenberg. This is one bill that was Representative Walter Hudson's bill to ban peaceful protests in residential areas. And I know that there are, as a conservative driving
protest?
around.
Is it like an actual peaceful or a Walls peaceful protest?
Well, the First Amendment doesn't define what peaceful protest means, but political speech, specifically your ability to go out and petition the government for redress of grievances, is like the core of why we protect freedom of speech. Right. And the government, obviously, legislators would love to silence dissent of any kind. And when they don't show up for work because of the House rules allowing them to vote remotely, they stay at home, as Governor Walz did during COVID. We brought the protests from the Capitol to his home, outside on the sidewalks. Maybe we blocked a bicycle path, but we had over 1,000 people protesting. And Walter Hudson's bill would make that illegal. If they pass gun control bills, they start confiscating guns. I expect conservatives to take to the street to protest this as well. And I don't think it should be banned. And this is kind of like populism and short-sightedness on the Republican side. But Senator Wesenberg, do you want to continue talking about kind of your personal opposition, not necessarily caucus position, but maybe the hopes of someday the Freedom Caucus taking a position against the bill?
Yeah, so I'll get back into it. We, like you said, this is banning the First Amendment right to free speech. Now, I became a legislator knowing that I'm taking it's a burden on myself and my family, but I am also aware that people are not going to like what I have to say, but I'm going to say it because it needs to be said. Getting to that point, we already have laws where if you're in front of my house and you're disturbing the peace, or you're doing something, or you're threatening my life, well, then we're going to get the police involved and make it stop. I'm not. If you're out, I live in the country. If you're on the road yelling at me, I'm going to take out my shotgun and start shooting in the air. That's my property. I can do whatever the hell I want. I'm not going to shoot it at you, but I'm going to shoot my gun in the air and say, "Get the hell out of here!" Right? So leave me alone. And I have the right to also say that. If you come on my property, you're trespassing. I make you leave. If you're in a cul-de-sac and you're blocking me from leaving my home, now you're keeping me a prisoner in my own home. If you're blocking my driveway, you can't do these things already. So what we need to do is we need to have higher standards. We need to first of all help our police officers, let our police officers do their jobs. This is starting in Minneapolis, where Frey isn't letting cops do anything. So we need to allow police officers to do their job, to go after actual criminals, not, pettiness and whatever. But if you're blocking I-94, those people should be arrested, and they're not. If you're looting Walmart or Target or whatever, you should be arrested, and they're not. So we're not even doing this. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to legislate these things to stop, but we're not even stopping actual criminals. So it's not needed. And it's like you said, we would no longer be able to go protest in front of Walls' house, and we're not there for weeks on end. And also, to get to another point, is in the Senate, we can still vote from home, so you don't have to show up. So if I can't talk to you at the Capitol, where am I supposed to talk to you? Like, I'm not going to go be profane. I would maybe come and knock on your door and say, "Can we talk?" And if you say no, then I will leave. Yeah, but also, if you have a sidewalk that's owned by the city, that's public, you may have someone protesting. Now, if you're there for a week, maybe you're now disturbing the peace, so you're not going to be allowed to stay there. Or if you're being profane, or you're doing something. But if you're peaceful, you're going to be there for a day. You're going to say, "I don't like you," and then you're going to go away. And that's just part of the job. And if you can't handle it, maybe you need to get thick skin, or maybe you just need to go drive Uber or something. I don't know.
I don't understand why so many legislators, both parties, all over the country, all houses, all states, right? Everybody, there is such a there's so much leniency for lawless, violent criminals, and so much desire to punish law-abiding folks. It's like people are in Minneapolis carjacking folks at gunpoint and getting a slap on the wrist, but they want to take away law-abiding people's guns, right? They want to take away all your guns, and some people never did anything, but the lawless criminals get nothing. And so I see this much in the same way, that when somebody shoots up a school, or people are, people do horrible things with guns. They should be, like, if somebody robs a liquor store at gunpoint or sexually assaults a woman at gunpoint, these guys should have the book thrown at them. They should be punished so much more severely than they're being punished right now. That's what needs to happen. But they don't need to take my guns away. I never did anything with them. I never broke the law with that, right? So when, Ron Paul said we don't have the First Amendment so we can talk about the weather. The First Amendment exists so we can talk about controversial things. And the Democrats want to have hate speech laws, right? Well, what's hate speech? Anything that that Republicans say, probably, right? So hate speech is not, that's mean. You can't say these things, so that's hate speech. No, we have to have the First Amendment protected in speech and in petitioning the government for redress of grievances. During the COVID lockdowns, some Democrats voted to end Wall's emergency powers just long enough to get reelected. And then when they could have ended it, they switched their votes back to protecting them. And the Capitol is behind a chain link fence, and everyone's voting from home. And I emailed Liz Lagarde and Sandsted, and I emailed them, and I called them, and I texted them, and everything else, and I never heard a peep from them, never answered my calls, anything. And then I went to their homes, and this is, these people vote from the seat of government, right? Well, they're voting from their home. That must be the seat of government, apparently. So I went to Liz Lagarde's house a couple times, and there's a committee. You can watch the video of a committee meeting where he's complaining, these people came to my house, and Kurt Dowd says, "Oh yeah, those are mean people." It's like, I only went there twice, number one, but also they're not responding. They're keeping businesses closed.
If there's any people who shouldn't be surprised that someone comes to your house, it's a person who is elected to represent the people in their district. Now, of course, oftentimes the people protesting have nothing to do with the district because they bust them in. We know the Democrats do that. Yet still, you're an elected official. And I just think that we have to be able to say to people running for any level of representation, we have this even at the party. People want to be elected to be a delegate. They don't want anybody to know who they are, where they live. I'm sorry. When you represent people, you need to understand that your job is to toe the line and fight the fight. That's why you're there. And if you don't want to fight that fight, then don't fight the fight. Get out of the way. Either lead, get out of the way. It's very simple. And if you're afraid, okay, then don't do it.
Right.
But don't let your fear infringe upon the rights of the people to address their representatives, people who are making decisions in our legislative body. And so this is just an incredible It's weak and it's fear-based, and you can't win any fight when people know you're afraid, because they're just going to escalate their attack on you and, frankly, our party. So we just have to stop this. We have to stop it. This intimidation.
Yeah, let me get into another bill that's similar to the protest bill that Republicans actually passed in I think it was the last session. And this has to do. It started out as a bill that would ban deep fake porn, or when you put someone else's face on pornography to get back at them or whatever, an AI generated stuff, and then it evolved into AI generated pictures and videos of politicians to protect them from being if a voter were to see an image or a video of a politician that was actually faked and then believe it, that it could have bad reaction in the polls for that person, and so the politicians passed this ban on AI videos. In fact, that just makes it illegal or a crime, but they can remove a politician from the ballot if I were to share a video of Tim Walz, for instance, or Amy Klobuchar that was altered within 90 days of a political contest, that the Secretary of State could remove me from the ballot and
it doesn't
jail
have
me.
to be porn.
Doesn't have to be porn. This
Right,
is
it's
just
important to clarify
anything that puts them in bad light. And I believe all of the legislators voted for it except for one person, and that's Senator Wesenberg. In fact, one of the people who passed the bill and voted for it turned around and sued it. Representative Mary Franzen is suing it, I believe in federal court, and it just got tossed at an appeals court because in the opinion they said because you voted for it.
So maybe I should be suing for it.
Right.
But yeah, every Republican and Democrat in the House and Senate voted for it, and I voted no. You're infringing upon people's First Amendment rights. And especially the bill is written to say, don't make fun of politicians. Well, oh my God.
We have to make fun of them.
We're adults. Well, this has been happening since forever. Look at old cartoons of people drawing whatever. It doesn't matter. Just stand on your principles and do good things. But if someone's making cartoons of you, that's their right. Now, if they're threatening you, that's different. But we already have laws for that, and we keep forgetting that. If someone says, I'm going to kill you, that's illegal. If someone does something bad and is going to hurt you, that's already illegal. We don't need to make a law that says, I can't make fun of someone's going to make fun of me. That hurts my feelings. Well, grow up.
Yeah.
So then I voted against it. And then it was funny because I know Alpha contacted Mary and other people. Well, why'd you change? Well, they didn't ask me why I didn't vote against it in the first place. Or why I voted against it in the first place.
They wrote an article about, I wrote a letter to the Alpha News and they published it about how bad this bill was that was going through the House and Senate. And I said, look, 3-4 years from now, you'll be able to ask some website, is this an AI video or not? And it'll tell you. So there's already a solution out there to solving this. And if I see a video of Tim Walz doing something horrific, I'm probably going to guess that it's AI first, right? Because you'll get used to this in society. But the problem is that if there's so many images that are slightly altered by AI, that Steve Simon could then just take our gubernatorial candidate, put him in jail, take him off the ballot, and then afterwards, when it's adjudicated in court, go, well, maybe it wasn't AI generated, but at that time, the election's over. Why would we give government the power to remove candidates from the ballot based on sharing or liking a post on social media?
So can you create video AIs of yourself as the Incredible Hulk as you're running for governor?
Well, and I think as we head into this break, I think something I'd like people to think about as we come back, this is a really important issue to talk about because they're passing legislation using language that has not been defined. And so what does it even mean to be AI? And because virtually every meme, every GIF is using AI now today, every one of them. So let's go.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot. I am Susan Smith here with Jeremy Munson, Senator Wesenberg, and Paul Tuschy. And I want to open up this segment with a kind of a quick discussion about one of the risks we have in our society is technology is moving forward so quickly. A while back, I was on a legislative task force that looked at ownership of genetic information. And it was incredible how quickly a group of people can go to the public good, and it's almost impossible to pull some of these groups back because of how stacked these committees get to be. And we're in a problem right now when it comes to this issue of AI. What does it even mean? Because virtually every person who creates any short video, movie, AI is in everything. And when they start talking about banning AI images and limiting that ability, the fact of the matter is it's just an art form and it can be used inappropriately and not. But the reality is that's in the eye of the beholder. And when we start trying to legislate these things and it's too broad, that just leaves it to our courts to make a determination about the scope of the law. And I personally do not trust a group of judges, period, to make those decisions for us because we've already seen how that works in Minnesota, right? So I think it's important to have this discussion. And for you as a legislator, when you see these bills, right, how do these discussions go? Like, leave it to the courts?
Well, yeah, no,
It's crazy.
I mean, I just vote no because that's what we need to do. If we're going to have a bill that we pass, it must be for the good of the people, and it must make sense, and it must be clearly defined, and not just put these things out there that grow government and harm individuals. So, if it's not well thought out, it shouldn't even be coming to the floor. And anything to say, Paul?
Well, I mean,
Or define
this
AI.
law,
What does it
right.
mean?
How many laws we were talking about the protesting things? We have lawlessness galore that's never punished. How many people that block highways ever get any significant punishment? None. But we let the lawless run rampant. We create new laws that are just another problem. Like you said, this AI thing and stuff. So,
But most of this AI that's being created are funny. It's like the diaper group.
Well,
they
I think
turn all them
the
into
point
little,
of
But
the bill was, if it's going to try to harm someone, then they don't want it to happen. And
So this
you could say, oh, something's funny. Some could say it's harming them. But if it's really causing harm, there's already laws. You can't harm people. Like then you take it to court. But you can't say we can't say we're going to ban AI.
Right. Just like there's already a
Or
zillion
cartoons
laws.
or
There's laws about careless driving, reckless driving, inattentive driving, right? But then a decade ago or so, it's like, oh, with cell phones now. Like, so in other words, you could eat 5 Big Macs, tend to your kids in the back seat and play the radio, and that's fine. But if you answer your telephone, now you're got a phone in your hand, you're a criminal,
And can you still smoke cigarettes in your
Yeah,
car? I don't know.
have a cigarette and a big cigarette in one hand, Big Mac in the other, driving with your knees. But now there's still every day there's new law around the country, in Minnesota as well. Well, what if somebody's watching a YouTube video in the passenger seat? It can't be able to be seen by the driver, otherwise it's a crime. There's crime after crime after crime. We already have careless driving, inattentive driving, reckless driving, everything going on. So if somebody's watching a YouTube video while they're driving, they can be charged with like 4 things already. We don't need a new law. But this AI thing that you mentioned, it's just one more thing. For the legislators want to make a new crime, and then the legislators and the courts are trying to criminalize, make all these new selectively enforced laws against people. Knock it off. There's already, we don't even enforce the laws that we have. We let people run wild and engage in lawless behavior without consequence. And now we're going to have more laws that just punish the law-abiding people.
So it's important also, when I wrote this letter to Alpha News that was published, the law, when we were in the process of debating it in Minnesota, I shouldn't say we, the legislature, because I wasn't there, Gavin Newsom was pushing for the exact same legislation in California, and Elon Musk was, spoken out about this bill and said, I will defend anybody that's challenged by this law to get this thing overturned. Meanwhile, Republicans in the Minnesota House are pushing the same thing Gavin Newsom was. I think that my ask of legislators has always been, make sure that when you're reading a bill, understand how this is going to be enforced, and then if it can be enforced, and then how this legislation could be used against us in the future, because you're basically growing government, allowing them to silence speech.
So
What a
you said,
fantastic case for why we have a Freedom Caucus and all the great things that a Freedom Caucus in Minnesota can bring. I mean, we're all brand new in this thing, but I'm the new state director in Minnesota. There's state directors in 14 other states, and some of them are red states, some of them are purple states, and some of them are blue states. Tell me what Minnesota is, if it's blue state, purple state, red state, whatever. But we have...
Hold on, Paul. I want to address something that Munson said. He said that Elon Musk was against this. So if you can contact him, then I can be named on the lawsuit and he can pay for it.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? I want to ask in the last few minutes we have, one of the questions people have is why start a Freedom Caucus when you're in the minority? Because most of the Republicans in the minority, well, obviously not all of them, but most of them vote no on a lot of the Democrat bills in the minority. But I would say that when you become in the majority, which I know that Eric Lucero has been in the majority, but the rest of you have not been in the majority yet. When you're in the majority, you'll have a large group of the Republicans in your caucus, in the larger caucus, who continue to vote to grow government, and then you'll have a smaller fraction of the Republicans who will want to shrink government, and this rift will grow larger. And it's very important to have a caucus that can message on reasons why these bills are bad. And that's why I see the Freedom Caucus as being the strength if we get to be in the majority. What are your opinions on this?
That's a 2-hour answer. We got minutes left. But I mean, well, one thing is we'll probably never get a majority if we keep acting like a bunch of wussies. It's radio here, right? We will not get the majority if we keep like cucking to the left. Can I say that on the radio? All right. So
People might not know what you mean, but
so,
yeah.
I mean, Scott Jensen lost by 7.5 points, right? Oh, we'll just be moderate and appeal to all the suburbanites. And like, how many votes did Jensen get versus what Trump got? He got what, 1.2. Trump got 1.5 million. So a lot of conservatives stay home when these candidates have no, stand for nothing, right?
Especially
so
the Christians. We
we had two of the new Freedom Caucus members drop impeachment, right? It's going viral nationwide. And I was mentioning, like, I have all kinds of networks in other blue states, purple states that have been effective, very effective at cutting government and making good moves. And so this is something that we can work with all Republicans in the state to get better messaging, to come up with ways that actually engage the voters and will turn out people in Minnesota. Hopefully the result of this is that conservatives around the state are engaged and turn out in the numbers that they turned out for Trump rather than the numbers they turned out for Jensen. If we can engage conservative patriots in Minnesota to go out and vote this fall because Republicans stand for something, that's maybe that will get us the majority. We won't even get there if we don't have that. So first of all, why start it in the minority? Well, easy answer is to it'll help us to get to the majority because we're never going to get it if we don't have we don't stand for anything.
By the way, using AI to take video of the Democrats saying what they say, that in and of itself is just, you could just use their actual images and their actual words and just put music to it. And there's no better, you don't have to make anything up. Don't make anything up. Use what they do. Use what they say.
Well, yeah, that's what I do. I just clip what they said. But getting back to the question Jeremy asked about the Freedom Caucus also. So now we have a large nationwide network that when people are thinking about how they're going to vote, now they're going to think about it harder. And that's how we go back the other way and stop going to the left. We got to get back to the right. And people are like, let's moderate. That doesn't happen. If you try to moderate, you just lose and you go further to the left. You just need to take principled stances, and that's what we need to do. And that's what this is going to help us do, is now people are going to think, well, maybe I should push the red button this time. Not everybody, but if you're in a strong red district, there's no reason in hell you can't vote like a conservative. That's it. And it's not going to change. And then guess what? Then we do get more people out, like Paul said. We get statewide conservatives, Republicans are going to come out and they're going to vote in numbers, and we can turn our state around. And that's how we do it. When people see, there's like looking at after those letters of impeachment dropped yesterday, the comments of I'm glad someone finally has a backbone, and they're doing something that means something. Now, is Walz going to get impeached? He's probably not going to get impeached. But we're saying we're damn sure going to try to make it happen. You
can't deliver 12 votes in the Senate for us, Nate, if we get it through the House.
And the fact is that doing what you're doing, I think using social media is critical. And how do you get viral on social media? Oftentimes is national media, because we have to leapfrog right over our local media because we don't have any.
That is a great point.
So that to me is, I think, where all of this comes together.
And looking at, we're coming up short, or we got to be done soon, but people know that the local media is not friendly to us. So when all the brainwashing happens, it's hard to change people's minds because they believe what they've been told through media, and we can't even get to them because we don't even have anybody that'll even tell the truth.
Right.
Well, this showed up.
Gentlemen, how can people find out more about the Freedom Caucus? What's your socials?
Well, you can go on Facebook. It's Minnesota Freedom Caucus. On Twitter, what is it on Twitter?
At Freedom Caucus MN.
Yeah. So yeah, if you look it up on there, you'll find it on Facebook or Twitter. That's where we are right now. And you can also go to my Facebook page, Senator Nathan Wesenberg, and see all the fun stuff that is happening right now. It's crazy, and we're trying to change it. And I'm going to keep telling people that I'm going to fight for you and never give up.
Great. Well, congratulations on launching and successful launch of the new Minnesota Freedom Caucus.
Thank you.
Thank you.